When it comes to car design, not every vehicle can be a winner. Some cars, however, are so outlandish, bizarre, and downright goofy that they leave us questioning what the designers were thinking. These cars didn't just push the envelope, they tore it up and threw it out the window. Here are 15 super goofy cars that would even leave Elon Musk, the mastermind behind some of the most futuristic designs in the auto industry, completely stunned. The 1970 Subaru 360 was Japan's bold attempt to capitalize on the growing microcar trend of the post-war era. But when it made its way to American shores, it was quickly branded as one of the most notorious automotive flops in U.S. history. What began as a practical and affordable vehicle for the narrow streets of Japan became a symbol of everything wrong with the American car market's venture into the unknown world of tiny, fuel-efficient cars. The Subaru 360, affectionately nicknamed the Ladybug in Japan due to its bulbous, rounded shape, was initially designed with practicality and economy in mind. In Japan, where narrow streets and tight parking spaces were common, its compact size made perfect sense. With a 360cc two-cylinder engine producing a modest 25 horsepower, the Subaru 360 was perfectly adequate for city commuting, especially in a country where driving speeds were generally lower, and fuel economy was a prime concern. The car's lightweight build, clocking in at just over 900 pounds, made it incredibly fuel efficient, which was a selling point in an era of rising fuel prices. However, when the Subaru 360 made its debut in the United States, its virtues in the Japanese market became its greatest weaknesses. American drivers, used to large, powerful sedans and muscle cars, found the tiny 360 laughable at best and dangerous at worst. The car's diminutive size, just over 10 feet long and barely 50 inches wide, gave it an almost comical appearance, especially when parked next to the behemoths of the American automotive landscape. The thin, spindly tires and tall, narrow body made the car look fragile, as though a gust of wind or a minor accident would send it toppling over. Despite its toy-like appearance, the Subaru 360's real issues ran much deeper. Its two-stroke engine, while efficient, was woefully underpowered for American roads, where highways demanded far more speed and power than the 360 could muster. The car's top speed of around 60 miles per hour was barely adequate for urban driving, let alone the sprawling interstates that crisscrossed the country. Acceleration was equally unimpressive, with 0 to 60 times measured in tens of seconds, rather than the single digits expected of performance vehicles. Safety was another area where the Subaru 360 came under intense scrutiny. The car's incredibly light build made it feel vulnerable in a world dominated by heavy steel sedans and trucks. There was little to no crash protection, and the body itself was thin, offering minimal shielding in the event of a collision. In fact, the 360 became notorious for its lack of structural integrity, with some critics joking that a strong gust of wind might be enough to tip it over. Its lightweight frame and narrow tires certainly didn't inspire confidence, particularly on America's fast-moving highways. Ralph Nader's influential book, Unsafe at Any Speed, which had shaken the automotive industry a few years earlier, only added to the car's reputation as a death trap. The Subaru 360 arrived at a time when safety concerns were beginning to dominate the conversation about car design, and it failed to meet even the most basic expectations of safety-conscious American consumers. This wasn't just about comfort and luxury, it was about survival on the open road, and the 360 simply couldn't compete. The Subaru 360's looks also worked against it. While its Ladybug moniker might have been endearing in Japan and America, it came across as goofy and unsophisticated. The car's rounded, almost cartoonish design lacked the sleek lines and aggressive stance that American buyers associated with style and power. The high, bubble-like roof, small windows, and minimalistic detailing made it seem more like a novelty than a serious contender in the car market. Its appearance might have drawn curious glances, but those rarely turned into sales. In fact, its poor reception was cemented by the now infamous Consumer Reports review, which declared the Subaru 360 not acceptable, due to its dangerously poor performance and build quality. This review became a turning point in the car's ill-fated journey through the American market, as buyers steered clear of what was quickly becoming known as one of the worst cars ever sold in the US. Despite its spectacular failure in America, the Subaru 360 wasn't without its merits. In its native Japan, it fulfilled a specific niche: affordable, efficient, and easy to park. The car met the strict regulations of Japan's K-car class, which limited engine size and overall dimensions for vehicles in exchange for lower taxes and registration fees. Within this context, the 360 was a well-thought-out utilitarian vehicle for the densely populated urban centers of Japan. But this success story didn't translate across the Pacific. The 1977 Sebring Vanguard city car holds an unusual and often amusing place in the history of automotive design, representing one of the earliest efforts to introduce electric vehicles to the American market. Decades before Tesla and other modern electric vehicles made waves, the city car blazed a path that, while paved with good intentions, led to what was arguably one of the most peculiar and awkward cars ever sold in the US. The first thing that catches the eye about the city car is its unique wedge-shaped design, a stark departure from the flowing, muscular lines of traditional cars of the era. At a time when cars like the Chevrolet Camaro, Ford Thunderbird, and Pontiac Firebird were turning heads with their aggressive looks and performance, the city car rolled in looking like a downsized angular golf cart. Its shape seemed almost absurd: sloped front, abrupt flat rear, and tiny narrow wheels, all bundled into a vehicle that looked more at home on a suburban golf course than cruising down a city street. With its lightweight plastic body, the city car was unapologetically minimalist. Sebring Vanguard, the company behind the city car, envisioned a future where cities were clogged with gasoline-powered cars, and this little electric vehicle would provide an eco-friendly alternative. In theory, it was ahead of its time, a response to the oil crises and growing environmental concerns of the 1970s. However, in practice, it fell far short of the mark. The city car's driving performance was perhaps its most glaring flaw. Powered by a modest 3.5 horsepower electric motor and lead-acid batteries, the city car had a top speed of just 30 miles per hour. It was barely fast enough for suburban streets, let alone highways, and felt sluggish even by the standards of the day. Acceleration was a slow, steady climb to that modest top speed, and it struggled to keep pace with anything but bicycles. The range was similarly underwhelming, with a maximum distance of 40 miles on a full charge, assuming ideal conditions. For most drivers, that meant a couple of short trips around town before needing to recharge, hardly practical for daily use. The city car's aesthetics certainly didn't do it any favors either. While electric cars are now often seen as sleek, futuristic machines, the city car looked anything but. Its tiny, boxy body sat high on narrow wheels, giving it a toy-like appearance that was hard to take seriously. The front end sloped awkwardly, while the rear was abruptly squared off, making the whole car look as though it had been chopped in half. The windows were small, the doors were simple, and the plastic panels felt cheap and insubstantial. Many joked that it looked like a refrigerator on wheels, and not without reason. It lacked the flowing lines, chrome accents, or even basic stylish touches that consumers expected from cars of the era. But perhaps the most damning characteristic of the city car was its impracticality. Even in the 1970s, when the oil crises had forced Americans to rethink their love for gas-guzzling cars, the city car's combination of low speed, short range, and awkward appearance made it a tough sell. Drivers weren't willing to trade in their reliability and speed for the novelty of an electric car that, in many ways, felt more like a glorified golf cart. The safety features were virtually non-existent as well, with a lightweight body offering little protection in the event of a collision. The city car lacked basic amenities: no air conditioning, no radio, and certainly no power steering or power brakes. Despite these shortcomings, it's important to recognize that the city car was, in some respects, a vehicle ahead of its time. Its very existence was a bold statement during a period when electric cars were seen as an impossible dream. Sebring Vanguard took a risk by creating a fully electric car when most of the world was still dependent on gasoline. In the midst of the 1970s energy crisis, the city car offered an alternative, albeit one that was far from perfect. It wasn't designed to go fast or travel long distances. It was meant as a city commuter, a vision of a future where electric vehicles would dominate urban centers. Unfortunately, the technology and market simply weren't ready to support this vision. The city car's legacy isn't one of success, but rather of early experimentation. While today's electric cars boast powerful motors, long ranges, and stylish designs, the city car embodied the challenges and limitations of early electric vehicles. It was a glimpse into a possible future, but one hampered by the technological and design limitations of its era. The wedge-shaped, awkwardly proportioned car might not have been practical or even pretty, but it did serve as a stepping stone for the electric vehicles that would follow decades later. The 1955 Messerschmitt KR200 is one of the most curious and charming oddities in automotive history. A tiny car that looked more like a grounded airplane than a traditional automobile. Designed by Fritz Fend, a former aircraft engineer, the KR200, also known as the cabin and roller or cabin scooter, was a product of post-World War II necessity and innovation. During a time when Europe was recovering from the devastation of war, the KR200 was a solution to a continent-wide shortage of affordable transportation. Yet, for all its practicality, it was also delightfully strange, embodying a design that seemed almost more suitable for a whimsical science fiction movie than the busy streets of Europe. The most striking thing about the Messerschmitt KR200 is its unmistakable appearance. Its elongated, bullet-shaped body, tiny three-wheeled chassis, and canopy-style top made it look like an airplane that had lost its wings. This wasn't a coincidence, as Messerschmitt, the company behind the KR200, was better known for producing fighter planes during the war. The sleek, aerodynamic shape of the KR200 gave it an odd, futuristic look, more like a vehicle you'd expect to see zipping along in a 1950s vision of the future, rather than a practical road car. The canopy was one of its most distinctive features. Instead of conventional car doors, the KR200's entire roof, made from plexiglass, flipped open like a cockpit. Entering the car was less like stepping into a sedan and more like climbing into the cockpit of a fighter jet. This design choice wasn't just for aesthetics. It also reflected the car's purpose as a low-cost vehicle in an era of scarcity. By keeping things minimal and compact, the KR200 was able to offer a truly different experience from anything else on the road. However, the strangeness of the KR200 wasn't limited to its appearance. The driving experience was equally quirky. Instead of a traditional steering wheel, the KR200 featured a handlebar, much like you'd find on a motorcycle. This steering bar controlled the car's single front wheel, and while it may have been manageable in a tiny, lightweight vehicle, it was certainly unusual for drivers accustomed to the feel of a traditional car. It was a challenging and somewhat odd experience to pilot the KR200, as the car's handling was more sensitive and prone to quirks than most drivers expected. For many, it felt less like driving a car and more like guiding a miniature aircraft down the road. Despite its odd design, the KR200 had a surprisingly innovative approach to mobility. Powered by a tiny 191 cubic centimeter two-stroke engine, the KR200 wasn't built for speed, but it was efficient. The engine, located at the rear of the vehicle, could propel the car to a top speed of about 55 miles per hour, a respectable speed for such a small, lightweight car. Fuel efficiency was one of the KR200's selling points, with some models achieving up to 87 miles per gallon, making it an economical choice in the fuel-conscious 1950s. Given its small engine and even smaller stature, the KR200 was never going to compete with traditional sedans in terms of performance, but it provided affordable transportation in a world where that was desperately needed. The car's lightweight and compact dimensions made it nimble, but that nimbleness came at a cost. The KR200's handling, especially at higher speeds, could be tricky. Its three-wheel design made it susceptible to instability. particularly when navigating corners or dealing with uneven road surfaces. While the car's low center of gravity helped somewhat, drivers had to be cautious not to push the little car too far. The lack of power steering and the unusual handling characteristics meant that driving a KR200 was an experience that required attention and care, more akin to piloting a small aircraft or a go-kart than driving a modern car. Inside, the KR200 offered minimalism at its finest. The narrow tandem seating arrangement allowed just enough space for two passengers to sit one behind the other. There wasn't much in the way of luxury or even comfort, just the basics to get you from point A to point B. The controls were simple and sparse, and there was little soundproofing or insulation, meaning that the whirring of the engine and the rush of the road were constant companions. However, this simplicity was part of the KR200's charm. It was transportation stripped down to its most essential elements, and for many post-war Europeans, it was exactly what they needed. The 1973 Volkswagen Thing, officially known as the Type 181 in Europe and as the Safari in Mexico, was a vehicle unlike anything else on the road at the time, and its peculiar name, Thing, certainly fit its unusual appearance and design. Born from a military background, the Thing was originally designed for military use in the 1960s, which explains its bare-bones, no-frills approach to engineering. When Volkswagen decided to release the Thing to the public in the early 1970s, it became a curious mix of utility, ruggedness, and quirkiness that caught the eye, but rarely the heart, of the average consumer. Visually, the Thing was unmistakable. With its flat, boxy panels, minimalistic design, and a front end that looked like it had been hammered into shape rather than sculpted, it was clear that aesthetics were low on the priority list. It had the same kind of utilitarian charm as a Jeep, but in a much stranger, more eccentric package. The flat body panels, angular edges, and high clearance gave the Thing a distinctly military vibe, making it look more like something you'd see trundling through a battlefield than cruising down the highway. Its looks were further accentuated by its removable doors and fold-down windshield, which only added to its oddball appearance. It was as if someone had taken a vehicle designed for rugged terrain and just dropped it, unchanged, into civilian life. What's even more interesting is that the Thing's design was a direct descendant of a World War II-era German military vehicle, the Kubelwagen, which had been used by the Nazis during the war. The Kubelwagen was a lightweight, open-air, off-road military vehicle, and the Thing inherited many of its design principles. This origin story gives the Thing an added layer of intrigue, as it was effectively a civilian repurposing of military hardware. However, unlike more refined or modern vehicles with military roots, the Thing didn't attempt to hide its utilitarian lineage. In fact, it seemed to embrace it, proudly displaying its military-inspired features in the form of its no-nonsense design, complete with oversized fenders, flat surfaces, and bare metal interiors. But while its appearance might have been striking, it was not exactly what most people would consider attractive. The Thing looked like a box on wheels, tall, ungainly, and completely unconcerned with conventional automotive design principles. Function over form was the order of the day. Its utilitarian nature may have appealed to a very niche audience, those who wanted a rugged off-road vehicle they could customize or modify themselves. But it was far from the streamlined aerodynamic shapes that were becoming popular in the early 1970s. In a decade known for cars with curves and muscle, the Thing stood out like a sore thumb. But to some, that was part of its charm. The Thing's design wasn't just about looks, it was built to be practical. Its removable doors, for instance, weren't just a quirky feature. They were a nod to its military origins, where easy entry and exit from the vehicle in rough terrain was a priority. The fold-down windshield wasn't just for style points either. It was meant for off-road adventures where visibility might be critical. You could take the Thing apart in ways most cars wouldn't dream of, removing its doors, lowering its windshield, and turning it into an open-air experience for a rugged adventure. This modular nature made it a vehicle that could transform depending on the needs of the driver, whether for a beach outing, an off-road excursion, or just a quirky city ride. Mechanically, the Volkswagen Thing was built on a platform that many people would recognize. Essentially, it was a modified version of the iconic VW Beetle. It used the same simple, air-cooled, rear-mounted engine that made the Beetle famous for its durability and ease of repair. The Thing's 1.6-liter engine wasn't going to win any speed contests, but it was reliable and capable of chugging along without much fuss. Off-road, it was surprisingly competent, thanks to its high ground clearance and basic, rugged construction. On the road, however, it wasn't nearly as comfortable. The Thing's top speed hovered around 65 miles per hour, and with its lack of soundproofing or modern suspension, highway driving could be an ear-rattling, bumpy affair. It was a vehicle better suited to dirt paths than smooth asphalt. Inside, the Thing's utilitarian ethos continued. The interior was bare, functional, and practical to the extreme. There were no luxurious trimmings or plush seats, just the basics to get you where you needed to go. The seats were simple vinyl affairs, easy to clean after a muddy off-road adventure, and the dashboard was as minimalist as could be. You wouldn't find a radio or air conditioning here, though some models offered them as options. The 1950 Davis Devon was one of those curious chapters in automotive history where ambition and eccentricity collided head-on, resulting in a vehicle that felt more like a sci-fi oddity than a serious contender on the roads. From its inception, the Devon was destined to turn heads, not necessarily in admiration, but in bewilderment. It was a car that seemed like it was plucked straight from the imagination of a pulp science fiction writer, complete with futuristic curves and just enough impracticality to ensure its short-lived existence. At a glance, the Davis Devon looked like something out of a 1950s vision of what cars in the year 2000 would be. Its teardrop shape was meant to look sleek and aerodynamic, and in fairness, it certainly succeeded in looking like no other car on the market. The idea of the Devon was born from the mind of Glenn Gordon Gary Davis, a man with an entrepreneurial spirit who saw the Devon as the car of the future, an economical, affordable vehicle that could take the market by storm. But reality, as it often does, had other plans. One of the most immediately noticeable oddities about the Devon was its three-wheel design. Unlike traditional cars, the Devon featured just two wheels in the back and a single wheel in the front, giving it an almost aircraft-like appearance. In theory, this design was supposed to improve fuel efficiency and make the car more maneuverable. In practice, however, it made the Devon feel unstable, particularly during sharp turns, as that lone front wheel bore the brunt of steering the entire vehicle. The decision to use three wheels, while innovative, made the car seem less reliable, something closer to a motorcycle with a roof than a robust automobile. The design language of the Devon was nothing if not whimsical. Its front end sloped dramatically, creating the illusion of speed, even while standing still. This spaceship-like profile, combined with its three-wheel stance, gave the car an almost otherworldly look. It was as though someone had crossed a jet plane with a car, resulting in a hybrid vehicle that was neither here nor there. Inside, the seating arrangement also departed from convention. The Devon could seat 4 passengers, but instead of the usual layout, they all sat on a single large bench seat. The name Devon actually referred to this feature, a nod to the idea that the car's interior resembled a living room sofa, fostering a sense of comfort and casual camaraderie among its passengers. In many ways, the Devon was a dreamer's car, full of inventive, offbeat ideas but lacking the refinement needed to make it a success. Davis himself was a master of promotion and salesmanship, boasting that the Devon was the car of tomorrow, emphasizing its lightweight aluminum body and futuristic look. Yet beneath the surface, the car's engineering was flawed, and its reliability left much to be desired. The Devon was underpowered, with a mere 47 horsepower engine that wasn't capable of providing the punch required to match its daring design. It struggled on the road, both in terms of performance and durability. In total, only about 13 Devons were ever produced, and it's easy to see why. The car's development was fraught with financial difficulties, and Davis himself became embroiled in lawsuits related to fraud. Investors who had believed in Davis's vision found themselves shortchanged, and production ground to a halt as quickly as it had started. The few Devons that did manage to hit the road were more of a novelty than anything else. Cars that made people stop and stare, but not necessarily for the right reasons. What makes the Davis Devon memorable, though, is its embodiment of the post-war era's optimism and fascination with the future. In the 1950s, America was riding a wave of technological advancement and innovation, spurred on by visions of space travel, atomic power, and flying cars. The Devon was a product of that era, a car that dared to be different, even if it missed the mark by a wide margin. It symbolized a time when designers weren't afraid to experiment, even if their ideas seemed a little too far-fetched for their own good. Today, the Davis Devon has earned its place in automotive history not as a success, but as a reminder of what happens when ambition outpaces practicality. The surviving examples of the Devon, rare and mostly kept in museums or private collections, are cherished for their sheer eccentricity. They stand as a testament to the boundless imagination of their creator, even if they never quite became the car of the future he envisioned. The 1974 Reliant Robin is a vehicle that has cemented itself in the annals of automotive history, not for its innovation, performance, or design, but rather for its unintentional hilarity. It's one of those rare cars that transcended its original purpose and became a cultural punchline, thanks to its precarious handling and unorthodox design. A three-wheeler with a single wheel at the front, the Reliant Robin didn't just break the mold, it tipped it over, quite literally. At first glance, the Robin seemed like a reasonable idea. It was designed to be an affordable and lightweight alternative to a full-sized car, catering to those who needed basic transportation without the hefty price tag or high running costs. In the 1970s, Britain, where economic practicality was highly valued, the Robin filled a niche for drivers looking for something simple and cheap. Its fiberglass body made it light, and its 750cc engine offered a decent level of efficiency for the time. But all of these features came with a major trade-off: stability, or rather, the complete lack thereof. The crux of the Robin's notorious handling issues lies in its three-wheel design, with a single wheel in the front responsible for steering the car. This unconventional layout created a center of gravity that was inherently unstable. When the driver took a corner too quickly, especially at high speeds or sharp angles, the Robin had an unfortunate tendency to tip over onto its side. The sight of a Robin rolling onto its roof became so iconic that it was often parodied in popular British media, most notably on shows like Top Gear, where its comedic potential was fully embraced. The Robin's awkward handling made it a challenge even for the most cautious drivers. Where most cars could take bends and curves without much thought, the Robin required a delicate touch, especially in wet or uneven conditions. Even a slight misjudgment of speed while turning could result in a disastrous tip-over, making the car feel more like a perilous balancing act than a mode of transportation. It didn't help that once the Robin began to roll, there was little that could be done to stop it. It was a car that required both hands on the wheel and a healthy dose of luck. But it wasn't just the handling that made the Reliant Robin memorable. Its design, too, was an exercise in oddball aesthetics. Small, egg-shaped, and distinctly lightweight, the Robin looked like the halfway point between a full-size car and a motorized toy. Its front-heavy appearance with a slightly sloping nose and comically narrow front tire added to its peculiar look. Inside, the Robin was sparse and functional, designed to meet basic needs without much in the way of luxury or comfort. This wasn't a car meant to impress. It was meant to get you from point A to point B on a budget, provided you didn't roll over along the way. Despite its many flaws, the Reliant Robin did have its supporters. For many, it represented the ultimate in affordable transportation, especially in a time when car ownership was increasingly seen as a necessity rather than a luxury. In Britain, where the Robin was most popular, its three-wheeled status meant that it could legally be classified as a motorcycle in some instances, which reduced road tax and insurance costs for drivers. This made it an attractive option for cost-conscious consumers who didn't mind sacrificing stability for savings. In this sense, the Robin fulfilled its purpose. though perhaps not as gracefully as its designers might have hoped. The Robin's unique place in automotive lore also stems from its resilience. Despite being the subject of widespread mockery and derision, the Robin enjoyed a relatively long production run, lasting from 1973 to 1981, with later revisions in the 1990s. It managed to carve out a niche market, appealing to a small but loyal group of drivers who appreciated its quirky charm and economic benefits. Over time, the Robin has evolved from a symbol of cheap transportation into a beloved oddity, with classic car collectors and enthusiasts preserving surviving models as curiosities of a bygone era. In retrospect, the Reliant Robin's legacy is twofold. On one hand, it's remembered as a flawed and somewhat dangerous vehicle that struggled with basic physics. Its reputation for tipping over in spectacular fashion is well-earned and remains a defining feature of its narrative. But on the other hand, the Robin represents a bygone era of automotive experimentation, a time when car manufacturers weren't afraid to take risks, even if those risks led to unintentional comedy. It's a reminder that not every car has to be a high-performance masterpiece to leave its mark on history. The 1965 Peel Trident is one of those cars that almost defies belief. A micro car so small and so oddly designed that it seems like something out of a cartoon rather than a product of real-world automotive engineering. With its egg-shaped body, one-piece bubble dome roof, and laughably diminutive size, the Trident is often regarded as the epitome of quirky car design. While most cars are built with performance, comfort, and practicality in mind, the Peel Trident seemed to have been crafted with whimsy as its guiding principle. At just 4 feet and 2 inches long and 3 feet and 4 inches wide, the Peel Trident was tiny, even by microcar standards. It was designed to seat just one person comfortably, though there was technically room for a second passenger if they were willing to squeeze into the impossibly small space. This made the Trident more like a personal mobility pod than a traditional car. The single-piece dome roof gave it the appearance of a toy space capsule, and watching one trundle down the road was like watching a child's pedal car come to life. Peel Engineering, based on the Isle of Man, had already made a name for itself with the Peel P50, another incredibly small vehicle that still holds the Guinness World Record for the smallest car ever produced. The Trident was the P50's larger but still tiny sibling, offering a slightly more spacious option for those who found the P50 just a bit too cramped. It shared the same 49 cubic centimeter engine as its predecessor, which provided just enough power to propel the car at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, or slower if there were 2 passengers inside. With a mere 4.2 horsepower, the Peel Trident was clearly not built for speed. Where the Trident truly stood out was in its design. The bubble canopy, made from a single piece of plexiglass, acted as both windshield and roof, giving the driver a panoramic view of the outside world. However, this feature was as much of a hindrance as it was a novelty. On a hot day, the Trident's canopy could quickly turn the car into a greenhouse, with the sun beating down relentlessly on its occupants. Ventilation was almost non-existent, so driving in warm weather was a uniquely uncomfortable experience, to say the least. Parking, however, was one area where the Trident excelled. It was so small that it could fit in spaces where no other car could hope to go. You could practically park it perpendicular to the curb and still have room to spare. In fact, some owners reportedly took advantage of the car's light weight and simply picked it up and moved it when needed. The Trident's petite size also made it a conversation starter wherever it went, as passersby would stop and stare at the sight of such a comically tiny vehicle zipping by on the road. As far as practicality was concerned, the Peel Trident had very little to offer. Its tiny engine and minuscule dimensions made it impractical for anything beyond short trips in the city. The lack of storage space meant that you could barely carry anything with you, and its low speed and toy-like build limited its usability on modern roads. But the Trident was never really about practicality. It was more of an experiment in minimalist transportation, a quirky solution for the urban commuter who didn't need, or couldn't afford, a full-size car. Despite its novelty, the Peel Trident never achieved widespread commercial success. Only a few dozen were produced, and they were sold primarily in the UK, where they were marketed as a cheap, fuel-efficient option for city dwellers. However, even in its time, the Trident was seen as more of a curiosity than a viable mode of transportation. Its unusual design, coupled with its lack of power and limited utility, made it a tough sell for most consumers. Today, the Peel Trident enjoys cult status among car enthusiasts and collectors. Its unique appearance and rare status make it highly sought after, with surviving models fetching high prices at auctions. The Trident has also gained a kind of pop culture immortality, frequently featured in automotive museums and TV shows that celebrate oddball vehicles. In a world obsessed with sleek, high-performance cars, the Peel Trident stands out as a symbol of eccentricity. A reminder that sometimes the most memorable cars aren't the ones that break speed records or dominate the luxury market, but the ones that make us smile. Perhaps what's most endearing about the Peel Trident is that it wasn't afraid to be different. In an industry where bigger often means better, the Trident dared to be small. It embraced its oddness and became something entirely unique. While it may not have revolutionized the car market or achieved great commercial success, it did manage to carve out a niche as one of the most whimsical and peculiar vehicles ever created. The 1970 Bond Bug was a car like no other, designed to be a bold statement on the road, a symbol of fun, quirkiness, and a touch of futuristic flair. With its bright orange, wedge-shaped body, the Bug looked like it was plucked straight out of a 1970s vision of the future, an era when designers were unafraid to dream up vehicles that broke all conventions. It was meant to be fun, affordable, and visually striking, a car that would turn heads and make driving feel like an adventure. But behind its daring design lay a vehicle that was more of a novelty than a serious contender on the road. The Bond Bug was the brainchild of Tom Caron, the same visionary behind some of the most iconic British designs of the time, including the Reliant Robin and the Raleigh Chopper bicycle. It was produced by Reliant, a company known for making lightweight three-wheelers, and was aimed at the youth market, a demographic that, in the early 1970s, was hungry for something cool, fun, and affordable. The Bug was all of those things in spirit, but in practice it had a few major shortcomings. Visually, the Bond Bug was unlike anything else on the road. Its futuristic wedge-shaped body, which lifted upwards like the canopy of a fighter jet, was both its most striking feature and its most controversial. Painted in bright orange, the only color available, the car exuded a sense of whimsy and rebellion against the more staid, boxy vehicles of the time. It was small, compact, and almost toy-like, with a minimalist, open-air feel that made it seem like something designed more for fun than functionality. Its compact size and low-slung design made it look agile, almost like a miniaturized sports car. However, the Bond Bug's three-wheeled setup made it inherently unstable, a problem that had already plagued other three-wheeled vehicles like the Reliant Robin. With two wheels in the rear and a single wheel in the front, the Bug had a tendency to tip over when cornering too quickly. This design flaw made it tricky to handle, especially for inexperienced drivers. While its quirky look attracted attention, the driving experience left much to be desired. Stability was always a concern, and the Bond Bug never managed to shake off the reputation of being prone to accidents, especially in fast or sharp turns. Under the hood, the Bond Bug was powered by a small 700cc engine, which was adequate for city driving, but far from thrilling. With a top speed of around 75 miles per hour, it wasn't going to break any records, but speed wasn't really the point. The Bug was designed for short, urban trips, where its compact size and funky style could be fully appreciated. However, its lack of power meant that even on the open road, it struggled to keep up with more conventional cars. And drivers had to be careful not to push it too hard, given its questionable stability. Inside, the Bond Bug was as minimalist as they come. The doors lifted upward with the canopy-like top, giving the driver and passenger the feeling of stepping into a spaceship. The seating was basic, the dashboard simple, and the overall feel was more like a go-kart than a real car. But for many young drivers, this was part of the appeal. The Bond Bug felt like something completely different, a fun, cheeky car that didn't take itself too seriously. Despite its charm, the Bond Bug never achieved widespread commercial success. While it was fun and quirky, its impracticality as an everyday vehicle was hard to ignore. The three-wheel design, combined with the lack of power and stability, meant that most people saw it as more of a novelty than a serious car. It was the kind of vehicle that was fun to drive around town on a sunny day, but not something you'd want to rely on for your daily commute or long trips. Moreover, the Bond Bug's unusual appearance made it a car that appealed to a niche market, rather than the masses. The Bug's production run was short-lived, lasting only from 1970 to 1974, with fewer than 2,300 units ever made. But despite its limited success, the Bond Bug has earned a place in automotive history as one of the quirkiest cars ever produced. Today, it has a cult following among collectors and fans of unusual vehicles. The bright orange wedge has become a symbol of a time when car design was more about experimentation and fun than practicality and mass appeal. In many ways, the Bond Bug encapsulates the spirit of the 1970s, a decade when designers were willing to take risks, to dream big, and to create something that was genuinely unique. It wasn't perfect. It was unstable, underpowered, and impractical, but it was also undeniably memorable. The Bond Bug may have been a flawed creation, but it has a lasting charm that continues to captivate those who appreciate cars that dare to be different. The 1958 Zundap Janis is a fascinating piece of automotive history that encapsulates the eccentricity and innovation of the post-war era. Picture this: a compact car that, at first glance, looks like it belongs in a whimsical cartoon rather than on the streets. The Janis was designed with a unique and decidedly unconventional layout. Doors that opened at both the front and the rear, and passengers sitting backward in the back seat, creating an interior experience that was unlike anything else on the market. The Janus was named after the Roman god of beginnings and transitions, who was often depicted with two faces, one looking to the past and the other to the future. This naming was fitting, as the car itself was a curious blend of practicality and absurdity, inviting both intrigue and skepticism. Manufactured by the German company Zundap, which was better known for its motorcycles, the Janus was introduced at a time when Europe was still recovering from World War II. There was a growing demand for affordable, efficient transportation, and Zundap sought to fill that niche with this peculiar vehicle. From the outside, the Zundap Janus had a compact utilitarian shape that resembled a miniaturized van. Its rounded edges and bulbous form were endearing in their oddity, almost resembling a playful toy rather than a serious mode of transportation. But it was the interior design that truly set the Janus apart. The front seat faced forward, while the rear bench seat faced backward, creating a surreal experience for passengers who found themselves gazing at the world behind them, as if they were perpetually looking back at their journey rather than moving forward. There was no rear windshield, which only added to the car's unconventional charm. Passengers in the back had to rely on the driver to keep them informed of what lay ahead. This backward-facing seating arrangement was intended to maximize space in a small vehicle, a clever idea given the compact dimensions of the Janus. Yet, it also came with its share of drawbacks. For one, the lack of a rear windshield could be disorienting for backseat passengers, who had to adapt to the strange perspective of facing the opposite direction. Imagine driving down the street with your friends sitting behind you, waving at everyone they passed, while you navigated the road ahead. It was a novelty, but not one that most consumers found practical. Under the hood, the Janus was powered by a modest two-cylinder engine, delivering just enough power for city driving. It wasn't a speed demon by any means, but it was designed to be economical and easy to maneuver. The Zundap Janus was primarily aimed at urban dwellers looking for a cost-effective way to get around, especially in the crowded streets of post-war Europe. However, its peculiar design did little to endear it to the mass market. Despite its quirky charm, the Janus struggled to find a foothold among consumers. It was produced for only a few years, from 1958 to 1961, with approximately 6,000 units manufactured. The market simply wasn't ready for a car that turned conventional design on its head. quite literally in this case. The Janis became a curiosity rather than a commercial success, overshadowed by more traditional vehicles that offered practicality and comfort without the added novelty. Over time, the Zundap Janis became a nostalgic artifact, remembered fondly by automotive enthusiasts and collectors who appreciate its distinctive design and the spirit of innovation it represented. Today, it stands as a testament to an era when car manufacturers were willing to experiment with unconventional concepts, often prioritizing whimsy and individuality over practicality. In the modern automotive landscape, the Janis may be viewed as a symbol of how far design has come. While today's cars are often defined by sleek lines and aerodynamic efficiency, the Zundap Janis reminds us of a time when the industry was still figuring out how to innovate while meeting consumer needs. Its charmingly goofy design, with its backward-facing passengers and whimsical approach to functionality, continues to evoke smiles and laughter, making it an enduring piece of automotive history. So, the Zundap Janis may not have been a commercial triumph, but it succeeded in capturing the imagination of those who encountered it. It was a car that embodied the spirit of adventure, encouraging us to look at the world from a different perspective, even if that meant facing backward. And perhaps in a world that often takes itself too seriously, the Janis is a refreshing reminder that sometimes it's okay to embrace the quirky and the unusual, to find joy in the absurd, and to let our imaginations run wild as we journey through life. The 1967 Fiat Multipla stands as a peculiar icon of automotive design, one that can easily be described as charmingly eccentric or utterly bizarre, depending on one's perspective. Imagine, if you will, a vehicle that looks like a whimsical experiment gone awry, one that merges the lines between a family car, a van, and a bus in a way that only a true visionary could conceive. The Multipla was created at a time when practicality and innovation were at the forefront of the automotive revolution, yet it defied conventions with its eye-catching, albeit oddball, proportions. From the outside, the Fiat Multipla has an unmistakable presence on the road. Its compact dimensions, wide stance, and distinctive silhouette resemble that of a miniature bus, giving it a certain retro charm that has earned it a place in the hearts of enthusiasts. With a front end that jutted out almost cartoonishly, and a greenhouse that feels like it could house an entire family, the Multipla was not shy about announcing its uniqueness. The windshield seemed almost to rise from the hood, while the headlights were set higher than what one would expect, creating an exaggerated appearance that was both endearing and bewildering. The design philosophy behind the Multipla was rooted in practicality. It was intended as a compact multi-purpose vehicle, MPV, that could comfortably seat 6 passengers. However, the execution left much to be desired. The interior layout was unconventional, with passengers perched almost directly above the engine compartment, leading to an intimate cabin experience that felt more like being part of a quirky art installation than riding in a conventional family car. The arrangement of the seats allowed for a roomy interior, but the sensation of being so close to the engine could be jarring, particularly for those unaccustomed to such a layout. Driving the Multipla was an experience unlike any other. The engine, located under the front seats, offered modest power, but the car's short wheelbase made it surprisingly agile for navigating tight urban streets. However, its design came with a significant trade-off. The front overhang and compact dimensions meant that drivers had to adapt quickly to the unique handling characteristics. Cornering was less about finesse and more about navigating the quirks of the vehicle's construction, a dance that demanded patience and understanding from its driver. Despite its odd appearance and unconventional driving experience, the Fiat Multipla found a niche audience among families and urban dwellers seeking a practical, albeit unconventional, solution to their transportation needs. It became a symbol of the Italian flair for creativity and innovation, showcasing how functionality could be blended with an audacious design ethos. The Multipla was not just a means of getting from point A to point B. It was a statement, a playful nod to the idea that cars could be more than just utilitarian machines. Yet, as time passed, the Multipla's unusual design and features became increasingly polarizing. While some hailed it as an innovative solution for modern family transportation, others viewed it as a product of misguided ambition. The automotive landscape began to shift, with consumers gravitating towards sleeker, more streamlined vehicles that emphasized aesthetics alongside functionality. In the face of competition, the Multipla struggled to maintain its market presence, ultimately leading to its discontinuation in the early 1970s. However, the legacy of the Fiat Multipla endures. Today, it is often celebrated in automotive circles as a quintessential example of mid-century design that embraced the quirky and the unconventional. The Multipla's unique character has made it a sought-after classic, and it remains a favorite subject among automotive enthusiasts and collectors. Its odd proportions, charming personality, and ability to accommodate the needs of families, albeit in an unconventional way, ensure that it will forever hold a special place in the annals of automotive history. In an era where vehicles have increasingly become sleek, high-tech machines, the Fiat Multipla serves as a reminder that there is beauty in embracing individuality and creativity. It challenges the notion of what a family vehicle should look like, proving that sometimes the most memorable designs are the ones that step boldly outside the lines. As we navigate our way through a world filled with homogeneous vehicles, the Multipla stands as a tribute to the spirit of adventure and the joy of thinking outside the box, a reminder that it's not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about enjoying the ride along the way, however quirky it may be. The 1970 Citroen Mayari stands as a testament to the spirit of innovation and whimsy that defined an era of automotive design where function often took precedence over form, though in this case, both elements dance to a rhythm of their own. Picture, if you will, a vehicle that looks less like a traditional car and more like a cheeky expression of creativity, a funky blend of utility and playfulness that could easily have rolled off the assembly line of a toy factory rather than a car manufacturer. At first glance, the Mayari captures attention with its unmistakable silhouette, reminiscent of a dune buggy, but with an aesthetic that's unapologetically quirky. Constructed primarily from ABS plastic, this lightweight vehicle was designed to navigate rough terrains and sandy beaches with the ease of a playful child at play. Its bodywork, if one can call it that, features a series of simple lines and angular shapes, giving it a look that feels almost like a cartoon version of a car. The bright colors and minimalist design evoke a sense of fun and adventure, making it hard to take the Mayari too seriously. Yet therein lies its charm. Citroen originally conceived the Mayari as a practical solution for outdoor enthusiasts and farmers who needed a versatile vehicle capable of handling varied landscapes. With a 602 cubic centimeter engine, the Mayari wasn't a powerhouse by any means, but its lightweight construction allowed it to zip along at a reasonable pace, providing a sense of liberation that heavier vehicles couldn't replicate. The simplicity of the design extended to its interior, which was equally utilitarian, featuring removable waterproof seats that made it easy to clean after a day of beach excursions or muddy adventures. It was a car built for carefree living, embodying a spirit of fun that appealed to a wide audience. Driving the Mayari was an experience that can only be described as exhilaratingly unique. With an open-air layout and a high ride height, it offered an unfiltered connection to the environment. A feeling of wind in your hair, sun on your skin, and the joy of traversing open spaces without the constraints of conventional automotive design. However, this lack of refinement came with its challenges. The ride could be bumpy, and handling was not as precise as one would find in more traditional vehicles. Yet for many, this merely added to the character of the Mayari, emphasizing its role as a playful companion rather than a mere mode of transportation. Despite its many charms, the Mayari's unusual appearance and unconventional materials drew mixed reactions. To some, it was an endearing oddity that broke the mold of typical automotive design. To others, it appeared like a toy vehicle not meant for serious use. Its plastic construction, while innovative, raised eyebrows regarding durability and safety, concerns that were amplified in an era increasingly focused on crash tests and build quality. However, those who embraced the Mayari understood that it was never meant to compete with luxury SUVs or sedans. It was a celebration of simplicity and adventure, a car that embodied the joys of spontaneous outings and carefree living. Over the years, the Citroen Mayari developed a dedicated cult following, becoming a beloved icon in certain circles. Its charm lay in its ability to evoke nostalgia and a sense of freedom, reminiscent of carefree summer days spent driving along coastal roads or winding trails. The Mayari came to symbolize a lifestyle that prioritized experience over prestige, an ethos that resonated with many enthusiasts and collectors. In fact, the Mayari has aged like fine wine, gaining recognition as a classic and even becoming a sought-after collector's item in recent years. The legacy of the Citroen Mayari is one of defiance against the status quo of automotive design. It challenges preconceived notions of what a vehicle should look like and serves as a reminder that cars can embody a spirit of joy and adventure rather than merely serve as tools for transportation. Its quirky personality and unconventional build continue to capture the hearts of enthusiasts, ensuring that the Mayari remains an enduring symbol of creativity and freedom on wheels. In a world increasingly dominated by sleek lines and high-tech features, the Mayari stands as a joyful reminder of a simpler time. Its design may seem whimsical, but its spirit is undeniably sincere, celebrating the pleasures of life's simple adventures. The Citroen Mayari may have started as a playful experiment in automotive design, but it has grown to become so much more. A cultural icon that continues to inspire those who dare to embrace their individuality and pursue their passions, wherever the road may lead. The 1975 Trabant, often referred to as the People's Car of East Germany, stands as a monument to automotive engineering gone awry. With its distinct, bulbous shape and diminutive size, the Trabant became a symbol of the socialist era, embodying both the aspirations and the limitations of the Eastern Bloc. To call it laughably bad would be an understatement. It was a vehicle that truly pushed the boundaries of what one might consider acceptable in automotive design and performance. At first glance, the Trabant's appearance evokes a sense of nostalgia and amusement. Its exterior was made from a material known as Duraplast, a plastic-like substance derived from recycled materials, including cotton waste, creating a look that felt more akin to a toy than a car. The finish was often rough, and the design was simplistic, resembling a boxy little egg on wheels. With its squat stance, small wheels, and oddly rounded edges, the Trabant appeared more like a cartoon character than a serious automobile. One could almost imagine it zipping around in a children's animated film, completely oblivious to its lack of sophistication. Beneath its quirky exterior lay an engine that matched the car's comical aesthetic. The Trabant was powered by a 0.6-liter two-stroke engine that produced a mere 26 horsepower, making it woefully underpowered by any standards. Driving a Trabant was less an exercise in performance and more an exercise in patience. Acceleration was painfully slow, and it struggled to reach speeds that would impress even the most forgiving of observers. Hills became formidable foes, and passing on the highway felt like a high-stakes game of chicken, where one was never quite sure if the Trabant would make it past the slow lane before traffic closed in. The Trabant's handling was another comedic chapter in its story. With a simple suspension system and lightweight construction, it offered a ride that was anything but refined. Corners were a challenge, and every bump in the road felt amplified, leading to a driving experience that was bouncy at best and downright chaotic at worst. It wasn't uncommon for drivers to feel as if they were piloting a small boat rather than a car, swaying and rolling through turns in a way that often inspired laughter, or tears depending on the circumstances. As if its performance issues weren't enough, the Trabant was notorious for its shoddy build quality. The assembly process was simple, to say the least, resulting in fit and finish standards that would make even the most casual car enthusiast cringe. Gaps in the bodywork, inconsistent paint jobs, and interiors that felt Spartan were par for the course. It was not uncommon for Trabants to come equipped with little more than the essentials: a rudimentary dashboard, a handful of dials, and seats that often felt like afterthoughts. Luxury was an alien concept in the world of Trabant. However, the Trabant's shortcomings did not keep it from becoming an enduring icon, particularly among collectors and nostalgia enthusiasts. Its reputation as a classic is rooted in the very qualities that once made it the butt of jokes. In a post-communist world, the Trabant evokes memories of a time when it was a symbol of practicality, serving as the only means of transportation for countless families. Its scarcity has only added to its charm, with enthusiasts finding joy in preserving these quirky vehicles and sharing their stories. While the Trabant may not have been designed for speed, luxury, or performance, it succeeded in bringing a sense of character and history to the automotive world. It's a reminder of a bygone era, a vehicle that, despite its flaws, represented the resilience and creativity of the people who manufactured and drove it. The Trabant was not merely a car, it was a cultural artifact, a conversation starter, and a symbol of a unique period in history. In the end, the 1975 Trabant may have become infamous for its cheap construction and laughable performance, but it remains a beloved curiosity. Its legacy continues to evoke both fondness and amusement, drawing enthusiasts who appreciate its undeniable charm. It's a vehicle that embodies the spirit of an era where practicality often outweighed performance, and where the journey was far more important than the destination. The Trabant stands as a testament to the power of nostalgia, reminding us that even the goofiest of cars can hold a special place in our hearts. The 1961 Amphicar, what a delightful oddity it was. This whimsical vehicle was born from the imaginative minds of the 1960s, a time when innovation and experimentation seemed limitless. The Amphicar sought to blur the lines between automobile and boat, inviting adventure on both land and water. However, it quickly became clear that this ambitious hybrid was more of a charming curiosity than a practical mode of transportation. At first glance, the Amphicar's design was undeniably distinctive. With its bulbous shape and playful features, it resembled a bathtub on wheels, a whimsical blend of automotive and nautical aesthetics. The front grille was cheeky and cheerful, framed by round headlights that seemed to wink at onlookers, as if to say, "Get ready for a ride like no other." Its vibrant colors and unique lines set it apart from anything else on the road, capturing the spirit of a bygone era when individuality was celebrated. But looks alone cannot carry a vehicle, and this is where the Amphicar began to falter. On the road, its performance was far from stellar. Powered by a modest 1.7-liter four-cylinder engine, the Amphicar struggled to reach any speeds that would make it exciting. With just 70 horsepower under the hood, it lumbered along like a leisurely Sunday drive in a park rather than a sporty roadster. The lack of power became painfully apparent when tackling hills or merging onto highways, where its sluggishness transformed every journey into an exercise in patience. Once the Amphicar transitioned from solid ground to water, the charm of its design quickly faded. While it could float and even be propelled by twin propellers at the rear, it had an alarming tendency to feel unstable. The transition from land to water was not a seamless one, as drivers often found themselves praying for calm waters while trying to navigate their aquatic escapades. The slow pace in water only added to the awkwardness. Imagine trying to impress friends by zipping across a lake, only to be greeted with snickers as you plodded along like a wayward turtle. The quirky nature of the Amphicar didn't just end with its dual functionality. It extended to its interior as well. The cabin, while designed to be cozy, felt cramped for 4 passengers. The use of materials reflected the era's aesthetic, with vinyl seats and a dashboard that seemed to combine a car's features with a boat's instrumentation. In essence, it was a mashup that felt more like a half-baked idea than a cohesive vehicle. Despite its shortcomings, the Amphicar became something of a cult classic. It represented a hopeful vision of the future, where cars could seamlessly transition from land to water. It captured the imagination of the adventurous spirit that permeated the 1960s, drawing in those who yearned for novelty and excitement. Owners became fiercely loyal to their quirky vehicles, taking pride in their Amphicars and participating in whimsical amphifests, where they could showcase their aquatic capabilities and bond over shared experiences. In retrospect, the Amphicar stands as a testament to the daring dreams of its creators, who dared to defy conventional boundaries. It embodies the notion that sometimes the journey itself is more important than the destination, whether it be on land or sea. While it may not have excelled in either category, the Amphicar succeeded in creating a unique experience, one that blended the thrill of driving with the charm of boating. Today, the 1961 Amphicar remains a nostalgic relic, a playful reminder of an era filled with whimsy and adventure. It may have been a flop in practical terms, but its enduring spirit captures the imagination of car enthusiasts and collectors alike. The Amphicar reminds us that innovation often comes with its own quirks, and sometimes it's the oddities that make life a little more colorful. The 1969 Austin Ant stands as a peculiar chapter in the history of British automotive design. Originally conceived as an off-road military vehicle, it was intended to serve as a practical, utilitarian machine for rugged terrain. However, the Ant's quirky and awkward design ultimately doomed its chances of success, leaving it relegated to the sidelines of both military and civilian markets. At first glance, the Austin Ant appeared more like a toy than a serious off-road vehicle. With its oddly high clearance, compact dimensions, and awkwardly proportioned body, the Ant seemed almost cartoonish, as if it belonged more in a child's sandbox than on a battlefield. Its bulbous front end, paired with a flat, boxy rear, created a visual imbalance that made it difficult to take seriously. For a vehicle aiming to compete in the rugged off-road category, where functionality and durability were paramount, the Ant's appearance did little to inspire confidence. It was a far cry from the imposing, purposeful look of other military vehicles, like the Land Rover Series 2, which dominated the market at the time. The Austin Ant was born out of a need for a lightweight, all-terrain vehicle that could serve military purposes in varied environments. It featured a four-wheel drive system, high ground clearance, and a water-cooled transverse engine. On paper, these characteristics seem promising. However, while the Ant's mechanical specifications aimed to make it a versatile and rugged vehicle, the execution left much to be desired. The Ant's performance in off-road conditions was mediocre at best. It struggled with stability on rough terrain, and its compact size made it difficult to carry the equipment or personnel necessary for military operations. Despite its theoretical potential, it failed to deliver the kind of durability and robustness that its target market demanded. In an era when other manufacturers were developing military vehicles with a no-nonsense, utilitarian aesthetic, the Austin Ant's strange proportions and somewhat whimsical design failed to resonate. It was designed with modularity in mind, allowing for different body configurations depending on the mission, but the execution of this concept ended up looking more disjointed than adaptable. The vehicle seemed neither rugged enough to handle true off-road challenges, nor practical enough to fulfill the everyday needs of military use. To make matters worse, the Ant's timing was poor. By the late 1960s, the British military already had a well-established relationship with Land Rover, which had proven itself as the go-to brand for off-road vehicles. Land Rovers were known for their reliability, durability, and rugged simplicity, qualities that the Ant couldn't match. The Ant's introduction into this already well-defined market felt like an afterthought, an unconvincing alternative to vehicles that had already set the gold standard. Despite its attempt to carve out a niche, the Ant's technical shortcomings and unconvincing design left it overshadowed. One of the greatest ironies of the Austin Ant story is how it became a symbol of missed potential. The concept behind the vehicle, a lightweight, all-terrain, military-grade machine, was sound. In fact, had the design been more thoughtful and the engineering more robust, it might have found a place alongside vehicles like the Jeep and Land Rover. But the Ant's unusual appearance, combined with its mediocre performance, made it difficult to take seriously. Even among military circles, where function typically trumped form, the Ant was seen as too awkward and impractical for widespread use. Ultimately, the Austin Ant faded into obscurity, remembered more for its quirky appearance than its contributions to the military vehicle segment. It serves as a reminder that even in the world of off-road utility vehicles, design plays an important role. While durability and performance are essential, aesthetics cannot be completely ignored, especially when a vehicle's visual language communicates its purpose and capability. In retrospect, the 1969 Austin Ant is often seen as a footnote in the history of British automotive design, a vehicle that had ambition but failed to hit the mark. Today, it stands as a curiosity for automotive enthusiasts, a reminder of the challenges faced by manufacturers trying to break into niche markets. The Ant's failure underscores the importance of a cohesive design that balances both function and form. Its strange, toy-like appearance may have sparked some amusement, but it ultimately sealed the fate of a vehicle that was meant for the rigors of the battlefield, not the pages of history's forgotten cars. The 1956 BMW Isetta stands as a fascinating icon of automotive history, a testament to the creativity and ingenuity of its time. This microcar, affectionately dubbed the bubble car, is a whimsical concoction of design that seems plucked from the pages of a children's storybook. Its rounded, egg-like shape evokes a sense of playfulness, resembling something that might roll off a cartoonist's drawing board rather than a traditional automobile. At first glance, the Isetta is nothing short of captivating. Its diminutive stature, measuring a mere 2.5 meters in length, is a stark contrast to the sprawling sedans of the era. The most striking feature is undoubtedly its front opening door, which swings wide to allow entry. This unique design was not just a clever aesthetic choice. It was a practical solution for a car so compact that traditional doors would have been unwieldy. Opening the door reveals a surprisingly cozy cabin, accommodating 2 passengers snugly seated in tandem, like the world's smallest carpool. Powered by a 247 cubic centimeter single-cylinder motorcycle engine, the Isetta generated around 12 horsepower. This modest power output translated to a top speed of approximately 50 miles per hour, enough for city driving but hardly suited for highway escapades. The engine's motorcycle roots hinted at the Isetta's purpose. It was designed for urban dwellers seeking an economical mode of transport during a time of post-war recovery. Despite its limitations, the Isetta was economical, achieving an impressive fuel efficiency of around 60 miles per gallon, making it an attractive option for budget-conscious drivers. Driving the Isetta is a unique experience in itself. The small size and lightweight frame offer a surprising agility, allowing it to navigate tight city streets and park in spaces where larger cars would falter. However, this compactness also comes with its own set of challenges. The Isetta's performance in high-speed situations could be disconcerting, and its lack of power steering required some effort when maneuvering. It was a car that demanded a playful approach, and drivers often found themselves chuckling at the sheer absurdity of cruising in such a quirky contraption. The exterior design of the Isetta is a playful fusion of aesthetics and practicality. The vibrant colors and charming curves make it a head-turner, ensuring that it remains an unforgettable presence on the road. It embodies the spirit of the 1950s, a time when optimism and innovation flourished, and the desire for individuality was paramount. Owning an Isetta was akin to sporting a fashion statement on wheels. It was a vehicle that radiated charm and whimsy, inviting smiles from pedestrians and fellow motorists alike. While the Isetta is celebrated for its quirky design and practicality, it also carries a hint of nostalgia for a bygone era. In an age where automobiles have become increasingly homogenized, the Isetta stands out as a symbol of uniqueness and creativity. It reminds us of a time when cars were more than just machines. They were expressions of personality and style. Though production of the Isetta ceased in 1962, its legacy endures. Today, it enjoys a cult following among collectors and enthusiasts who appreciate its historical significance and playful charm. Restored models often grace car shows and vintage events, captivating audiences with their delightful design and lighthearted spirit. The Isetta is more than just a car. It is a conversation starter, a piece of art on wheels that invites joy and wonder. In a world filled with high-tech vehicles boasting cutting-edge features, the BMW Isetta serves as a reminder that sometimes the most memorable journeys come from embracing the quirky and the unconventional. It encapsulates the idea that driving should be an adventure filled with laughter and joy, even if it means squeezing into a bubble-shaped car powered by a humble motorcycle engine. In the end, the Isetta remains a symbol of the joy of driving, a delightful reminder that the journey is often just as important as the destination. These 15 super goofy cars are a reminder that not every innovation hits the mark. From strange three-wheelers to bubble-shaped microcars, these designs would leave even Elon Musk, the king of futuristic vehicles, scratching his head in disbelief. Which one of these bizarre cars is your favorite or least favorite? Let us know in the comments.